As I'm sure you're painstakingly aware at this point, the latest Division 2 update reintroduced incursions from the first Division game. These missions see 4 players battle their way through tough mechanics and even tougher enemies to ultimately become the victors and claim a chance at the coveted Ouroboros SMG. An unofficial world first race was hosted for this activity, which was over before most people had a chance to heat their popcorn. The first team finished in just 40 minutes. As with any pinnacle activity, the best players the game has to offer immediately got to work on personal challenges within the game mode following their first glitchless clear. Whether it was theory crafting low man, aka duo or solo strategies, or experimenting with speedrun strategies, it's safe to say that most 1% players had their mind on nothing but setting records that day. As with anything, if enough people group together and try hard enough, solutions to problems are found quickly. It was just a few hours after release that the first boss one-shot was found in the incursion, and in this video I'm going to teach you exactly how that and the later found final boss one-shot works. A few very quick side notes before we get into it. Firstly, I did publicise these one-shots on release day, but it was not me who discovered them. Full credit goes to the SMB clan, and most notably German speedrunners Ronan and Broken, who were the first to crack these strategies. I've linked their channels in the description, so please make sure to show them some love. They're fantastic players and lovely guys. Next, I'm aware this is a contentious topic in the community at the moment. If you disagree with one-shotting bosses, I'd suggest you don't continue watching this video. And please remember that everyone in this debate is human, so treat them as such. Any unconstructive, toxic, or straight up aggressive comments will be removed. These strategies ultimately do rely on glitches, and I fed the exact steps to recreate them to the developers for fixing. That said, whilst they're in the game, they will be the meta speedrun strategy, as it's the fastest route to complete the incursion in an any % setting. With that said, and with apologies for the long intro, let's get into the video. So before we take this incursion specific, we need to talk mechanics. Both of these one-shots rely on something the speedrun community refers to as busy bee switching. The busy little bee is a fairly recent introduction to the game, which at face value seems a bit mid. The talent allows the player to mark up to 10 unique enemies with the sidearm, gaining a stack per mark, and upon switching to a different weapon, stacks are consumed to give that weapon 20% amplified damage per stack, up to 200% for 10 seconds. In standard gameplay, this is nice, but the time it takes to stack the talent doesn't usually justify the short period of bonus damage, and it's very fiddly. Naturally though, where there's potential for a massive damage buff, there's potential for a massive single shot, and this is where the mid-casual gun becomes an absolute speedrun monster. This build won't be unfamiliar to those who are somewhat acquainted with existing speedrun or one-shot strategies. It consists of Punch Drunk, Sacrifice, Dodge City, Habsburg Guard Backpack with Vigilance, Contractors, and Fox's Prayer, all roll to headshot damage with a Regulus. Pair this build with an Achilles Pulse and suddenly you have potential to hit hundreds of millions of damage in a single shot when fired in a buffed environment. But, I hear you say, this build uses Regulus, so how does it benefit from Busy Little Bee? Let's break this strategy down into 2 parts for ease of explanation. Firstly, the talent switch. For this stage, we're going to equip Busy Little Bee in place of Regulus. You'll mark your targets as normal, but instead of pressing switch weapon to utilise the buff on another weapon, you're going to keep the Busy Little Bee drawn. Now, you simply just need to open your inventory up, scroll over to pistol and equip your Regulus. Upon closing your menu, you'll now see that you have a Regulus equipped with the Busy Little Bee talent active, but you shoot and notice that the damage isn't anywhere near what you've seen in videos. Enter part 2 of the strategy. What the keen-eyed of you will have noticed is there's one key element of the build and damage we're missing out on by keeping our pistol constantly drawn. Dodge City Gunslinger's holster. You know that you need to fire the Busy Little Bee, which will consume any Gunslinger stacks, and you know that switching off of Busy Little Bee to charge Gunslinger will consume the Busy Little Bee stacks. It's a catch-22. How are we going to keep both buffs? This is actually quite simple. You just need to equip any chem launcher. When drawn, a chem launcher won't consume Busy Little Bee stacks, but will allow charging of Dodge City. So let's now knit these 2 elements of the strategy together to bolster the full Busy Little Bee switch strategy. Firstly, you draw Busy Little Bee and stack it to 10. Next, pull out any chem launcher, making sure you don't switch away from the Busy Little Bee while you're doing so. Wait until your Dodge City icon is full. This will take 30 seconds, assuming you have the chem launcher drawn the whole time. Put the chem launcher away, again being very careful to switch straight to the Busy Bee and not another weapon. If you switch to another weapon, you'll need to restart the full strategy. With Busy Bee in hand, open your inventory, scroll to pistol, and switch Busy Bee for Regulus. You now have a Regulus with 10 stacks of Busy Bee and a full Dodge City holster for 10 seconds. Achilles your target and shoot. And holy, that's big damage. So that's the core Busy Bee strategy covered off. Let's look at the practical incursion applications for said strategy. Firstly, Wright. Once you've got a grip of the Busy Bee switch, Wright is actually a pretty straightforward one-shot, but one that requires a lot of buffing to reach the required damage. It's 810 million in a single shot to crack the boss, or 910 million for an outright one-shot. It's even been pulled off in a duo, again, love to Ronan and Broken for that. In a 4-man squad, the team composition is as follows. 1 buff or tank build, 1 pure buff build, 1 Acosta overcharge build, and 1 shooter. I'm not going to cover exact builds here because there's a lot of flexibility. In short, the tank player needs to be able to survive a couple of hits from the boss, the buff player needs to be able to provide the buffs we'll discuss later, the Acosta build needs to be at skill tier 6, and the shooter will be wearing the build we covered earlier. Past those requirements, you can wear whatever. Let's cover each role off. Firstly, the tank. The tank will have opportunistic on, and will run right up to the boss door and take a hit. Once the boss is visible, the player will run back to a position where the boss will be vulnerable to water damage on the stage. They'll then apply 8 shots of Scorpio to the boss whilst immune, making sure to only shoot areas that the shooter won't be aiming for, so as not to accidentally consume Achilles marks. The boss will swing at this player and exit immunity. At this point, the tank applies a single Scorpio shot to proc opportunistic, and that role's job is then done. The buff player will be wearing 4-piece future initiative with the lefty, providing perfect sledgehammer, equipped. They'll wait for the boss to move to the stage before throwing a grenade to proc sledgehammer. This role's job is then done. The Acosta player will be waiting at the valve for the stage. This player will overcharge themselves as the encounter begins by throwing a grenade. Once the boss is visible, they'll immediately apply Achilles bolts to him. Once the boss is in position for water, they'll pull the valve and their job is done. The shooter's job here is pretty straightforward, provided they're comfortable with Busy Little Bee switching. They'll be waiting at the stage, fully stacked, and when the boss is visible, they'll make the switch to Regulus. Once the boss is out of damage and all buffs are applied, the shooter just shoots an Achilles point. Provided all buffs are in place, this will be a clean one-tap. So there we have it, a full Wright one-shot explained. Wright done? Only 1 or rather 2 bosses to go. To save you having a bunch of information repeated, I'm just going to say that this is an incredibly similar setup to the Wright one-shot, and that I'll be shorthanding anything that is repeated. Let's look at the key differences. Firstly, this will utilise global overcharge, meaning BTSU gloves will need to be used on the buff player. Next, because all players have direct line of sight to the bosses, we don't need to separate buffs as much. This means that more buffs can come from a single player, though be careful if you're not super experienced with this stuff. Putting responsibility for lots of buffs onto a single player does increase margin for error. Next, there are 2 bosses, which means we'll need 2 shooters. Same build, same mechanics, just doubled. Finally, this strategy actually relies on a brief period whereby both bosses are able to be damaged before any adds have spawned or any mechanics have been completed. This means that all of the following needs to happen quite fast. Let's do a role-by-role breakdown. Firstly, the future initiative buff player will line up a sledgehammer grenade at the boss's spawn, with lefty drawn. Whilst they throw this grenade, they'll deconstruct their hive to give overcharge. They'll then scan a pulse for the extra 15% amplified damage. Next, the second buff player. This player has a very simple role. All they need to do is shoot both bosses at the start with a shotgun to apply opportunistic. Once oppo is applied, their job is done. Finally, the 2 shooters. This is very similar to the Wright shot. When the gate opens, they'll switch their Busy Little Bee for Regulus. Once overcharge kicks in, they'll Achilles their boss and shoot an Achilles mark. Provided all buffs are in place and all goes to plan, both bosses will drop and you're done. Easy. So I hope this video helps to shed some light on exactly what's going on in these one-shots. Keep in mind that these are very easy on paper, but challenging to actually execute due to the lack of margin for error with buffs. Good luck out there, and if this video helped you, please like and subscribe. With that said, thanks for watching.